How do we dream a good dream for the world when it seems like there are so many things that are falling apart? When there are so many broken dreams in the world? Well, I think that when we experience the reality of broken dreams, whether it's something as small as our Christmas plans being canceled, or something as deep and wide as the loss of a loved one or the loss of a job, there is latent in those broken dreams the potential for greater compassion and generosity. Because, as Mary's song states, the revolution takes hold in the people who know loss, who have experienced that life is not fair, who are empty and in need of being filled. It means that they have to look beyond the circumstances of their lives for something new. Their emptiness opens them up to be filled by something other than what is right before them. And COVID has emptied us out too. We have been emptied of our everyday rituals and the rituals of the weeks and the years that in the past have helped sustain us. We miss things that really matter, and we look forward to when we'll have them back again. But this emptying has also helped us recalibrate and maybe appreciate what really matters. But this is also the time when things are being revealed that are not just or fair. And those who have been well acquainted with loss and injustice are now taking center stage. We are recognizing that those who are aging in our culture are not valued as they should be. Many seniors are lonely, and those who care for them are not valued or paid enough. We're dropping the ball when it comes to the seniors in our culture. Racism is being revealed not just in the States, but in our own country and province. Last week, racist comments were made about our own chief medical health officer by anti-mask protesters. Racism is alive and well here, too. Those who are most vulnerable have been left behind by our economic system. This week, you might have heard that it was announced that Mackenzie Scott, the former wife of Jeff Bezos, has given away $4 billion to nonprofits struggling because of COVID. She said that this pandemic has taken money from the most vulnerable who receive help through these nonprofits, while the rich just get richer. Those who are losing access to these services are mostly women and children, and most of them are people of color. People with mental health issues are suffering more because of isolation and the weight of the pandemic on services that they really need. And we could name many more issues of injustice that are being uncovered by this pandemic. And so this pandemic is helping us realize that this world is broken and unjust for many people, and mostly for people who can't fight those injustices on their own. And yet, in the middle of this, Jesus is still being incarnated. Jesus is coming. That is the promise of Advent. But still, in the middle of this, Jesus is being incarnated. Jesus is coming. That's the promise of Advent. In the middle of this, and actually in some ways because of this, God is inviting us to dream about a different way. And Jesus reveals that new way. Jesus, instead of hoarding what he has, pours it out for the sake of the world. Have you ever been to a birth or had a baby? Think about that process for a little bit. It is messy. It hurts. And babies come out squished and covered with goo. And that's how the God of the universe came into the world. He poured out his power and became completely dependent. His revolution starts with humility. And that's the clue as to how we allow this new dream to take root in us. We follow the ways of humility, of Jesus' way of self-emptying. And the practice of generosity is a way to pour out what we have been given in order to fill others, but also to make room in ourselves to be filled again, to make room for Jesus to be incarnated again in us. So generosity does double duty. It spreads around resources that are needed. It sows seeds of happiness and security in the world, but it also helps loosen our grip on things that might stand in the way of us following in the humble way of Jesus. Generosity helps us live in dependence on God and allows us to experience the interdependency that we were made to have with one another. It makes room in us for Christ to come, but it also allows us to be a part of what God is up to in the world. It's brilliant. So, this week for our generosity practice, we're going to give some money away. We've talked about giving time and attention to practice generosity, but there's something really important and central about giving our money away because money has such a hold in most of our lives. Now, some of us can only give a little bit, and some of us can give a lot, and most of us can give more than what we think we can. But the amount is not the point. The practice of generosity is. So here's your challenge. Think about the injustices in the world. Think about one that really bothers you, and then find a reputable organization that addresses this injustice and commit to financing that organization. 50 years ago, my dad did his medical residency in Haiti. And when he was there, he helped out in a little foster home run by 2 women in the north of Haiti. And this home provided medical care and help for the most vulnerable of Haitian kids, those with TB or disabilities or other congenital health issues. Now, my dad couldn't stay in Haiti, but when he got home, he started supporting the women and kids financially and committed to doing so for many years. In fact, my mom and dad still support that little foster home today. In 2010, when the earthquake hit Haiti, one little boy showed up at the home. He had lost his whole family, and he was so traumatized by his experience that he wouldn't speak. Sometime after he arrived, he was invited to go with some of the workers to Port-au-Prince to pick up another little boy, and he decided to go along. So they picked up this other little boy and were headed back to the home. And as they were driving along, the first little boy turned to the second little boy and said to him, "You are going to heaven." Now, the bulk of the work done to bring heaven to earth for these little boys, to create a new dream for the most vulnerable, is done by the Haitian workers on the ground. But my dad's money has helped create a safe place for these little ones. He couldn't stay in Haiti, but he could support the women who could. It was a way of staying connected to a cause that he really cared about. Now, maybe you care about prenatal health or orphaned kids or the foster care system. Maybe you care about Indigenous issues or domestic abuse or racial injustice or food insecurity. Find an organization that helps address those issues and throw your hat into the ring by giving them your money. We have 2 amazing organizations that we're supporting through our Advent giving. Hands at Work supports communities living in poverty in Zambia, and most of the on-the-ground work done there is done by Zambian women who take in vulnerable kids and look after them. Sons and Daughters supports foster families here in Saskatoon. Being a foster parent is really hard work, and most people can't sustain the work over the long haul. But Sons and Daughters is working to create support systems to help sustain those on the front lines who are providing support and stability to vulnerable kids in our city. You may not be able to be a foster parent, but you can help support those who can. There are many stories both of these organizations can tell of bringing heaven to earth, and supporting them financially is a way to be a part of that. So pick a cause, pick an organization. And here are a couple of pro tips for choosing. If you're choosing an organization or a cause that is happening in another country, choose one where the majority of the employees and leadership are citizens of that country. Do your homework so that you know you are supporting a cause that cares about justice and equality in their own organization. Choose an organization that really needs your resources, where the bulk of your money is going where it is needed most, and not to overhead costs or to bigwig CEOs. Now, that being said, just because there are organizations that you can't trust Doesn't mean there aren't lots that you can. So don't let cynicism keep you from giving your money to really good things. And if you are already giving regularly to causes that you care about, and I know many of you are, here's another idea for being generous. Start putting money away every month. Keep a fund that you can use to help people as you come across needs that maybe only you can see and respond to. You don't get a tax write-off for this, and I would encourage you as much as you can to give this money away in secret. It will be a great way not only to share generously and experience the joy of doing so, but also to make sure you're giving simply because God has asked you to, and not to get recognition. Ask for God to bring people into your path who need it, and share liberally and graciously when you can, remembering that this is an expression of gratitude for all of the good things that God has given you. This week, let's give some cash away. Invest financially in God's new dream for the world by financing causes and organizations that fight injustice and bring heaven to earth.